trying to put together many scholars together and create proper road shows. Properly go from town to town, Garissa, Wajir, Mandera, Lamu, Mombasa, and go bring all these big scholars. Al-Shabaab, by the way, has killed a good number of the top Muslim scholars in the region. And the top Muslim scholar in Kenya here is one Sheikh Muhammad Umar.
Yeah.
Sheikh Muhammad Umar is on a wanted Al-Shabaab list now for ages. He cannot sleep in his house without having his own elaborate way of trying to protect himself. But the sad part of it is that he's also on this list of people whose assets were frozen because they're Al-Shabaab.
Right.
Another one who is also a very powerful scholar is Sheikh Mohammed Osman Igal, who has had so much issues with the Kenyan system because he's an investor in here. He's got a university, Raf University out there. He's an extremely moderate person. He has always opposed these Al-Shabaab methods and Al-Shabaab ideals and doctrines. But he's also on the list, and he has had problems with the system for a very long time, but purely out of either business, rivalry, and occasionally maybe he got involved into the party politics in the country. But nothing to do with this. This guy would be an asset, a very powerful asset. So we're trying to put all these people together now and have them to go out there and educate the Muslim youths and the non-Muslim youths and everybody else on what actually Islam
is all about.
Is all about.
Okay.
That's basically, in my opinion, the way we have to go about these things. Now, for us to be able to achieve that, we must have the government fully with us. These sheikhs need to be defended.
What does it mean to be fully with you?
Fully with us in the sense that the government has got to walk the talk with us. We are here. We've got what we need security for the sheikhs. We need basically the government to be enjoined with us in this thing so that it supports us all the way through.
Do you have a feeling that they're not fully enjoined?
You know, this is the kind of things that the members of parliament went around right now talking to the people and telling them, and there was hardly any powerful scholar who was out there with them. I mean, it was all politics. And as he says, this is an ideological warfare. You cannot counter ideological threats with either force or with politics. You have to have a very powerful, superior ideological counter to that, which is there, by the way. It's there. And a lot of the young people will be able to change within the shortest possible time. So what we need to do right now is to see how we can bring everybody together and get these top scholars. By the way, between the topmost Muslim scholar in this part of the world is one sheikh who was killed. He was a rector of a university in Puntland, and he was killed by Al-Shabaab.
Okay.
Let me just finish on this thing.
Okay.
The other thing I want to tell you is that Al-Shabaab, we can do what we can do inside the country here. But we don't know what other strategies they are going to develop from the other end to counter our own strategies here. So the military aspect of eradicating Al-Shabaab and the ideological aspect have got to be together, because there are those ones among them who know that this is wrong, but they are convinced for their own reasons that we don't know ourselves. Take a look at Puntland, a small state, autonomous state in Somalia. No AMISOM forces there, no KDF, no Ethiopians, no everybody. They clean, there's no Al-Shabaab in Puntland. They wipe them out completely, follow them all the way to the mountains, go to Somaliland.
Okay.
They don't have any of these things. Why do we have 50,000? How many, what's the force, the Ugandans, the Burundians, the Ethiopians, the Kenyans, the Djiboutians, the Sierra Leone, when you put them together, they're probably, what, 30, 40,000? Maybe around 40,000. What are they doing?
All right, let's move this conversation forward, and I want to bring in Mr. Halake here, and let's talk about the stakeholders. He's talked about ideology, and even in today's paper, we can see there's somewhat some disagreement between SUPKEM and religious leaders in terms of the way forward. And there's also the narrative that is being pushed from whatever angle that it's a religious war, whereas it may not be a religious war. What do you think is a solution or the responsibility of the religious leaders in this case to ensure that we unite and fight war together, this war of terror?
I don't know much. I don't know much about the religious communities, but I think like both Ndugu Simiyu and Ndugu Mufara have explained, and I've said it even before, one solution will not take us anywhere. One state institution or non-state institution cannot take us anywhere.
But I'm sure as Al-Shabaab or those who are pushing for terrorism, any split they find that we have, they can take advantage of that.
And that is why we are such a perfect candidate. The fact that we have got tremendous amount of divisions within Kenya, and they are working so hard, particularly on the religious part. You know, the ethnicity is set. You know, we are fairly divided. You know, if you live in other countries, it's very easy. Once the nation is attacked, we tend to rally around. But here it's slightly different. But now, to your question about the role of the religious leaders, particularly the Muslim religious leaders, they have an incredible role to play in terms of countering this. You know, whether there are divisions within, you know, the Islamic organizations, I think that is a moot point to me. What we need, like Nugufara has said, we need all these stakeholders to be reading from the same script. If the president or, you know, the executive wants to meet, you know, Muslim scholars or Muslim leaders, they have a role to play, but they need to be seen to be involving. But my concern is generally, now we've had, you know, Garissa attacks. Everybody, you know, this will become on everybody's radar. And then after a few months down the road, we move on to something else. But this has to be sustained. We have to sustain it when we have to scale it. Because Al-Shabaab is not just recruiting Muslims or Muslim-looking, you know, type of people now. They have gone elsewhere. I'm being informed that particularly parts of Western Kenya is now another good place that they're recruiting from. Our our informal settlement areas are also one area that, you know, people convert and they have been taken to Al-Shabaab. So the point I'm raising is that we need to move from, you know, a single solution kind of approach. And like Ndugufara said, we need all these things to be moving in the same direction.
In the same direction.
If we say, you know, like we are putting these guys on terrorism, it has to follow, what objective are we trying to achieve? We have, you know, in ad hoc way, we have our counterterrorism strategy. Do we have counter-radicalization strategy? Does it involve the Muslim community or Muslim leaders? All these things need to be, if we focus only on one piece of the puzzle, chances are that we will not be very effective. But if we focus on all of them and we have proper command, control, and communication, then we will be able, because it is my sincere belief that Al-Shabaab is not that powerful. It's just that we've not done such a good a job in terms of dealing with it. And I want to add something before I leave. And this is the nexus between corruption and national security. Because a lot of the time, you know, when we talk about corruption, we hardly link it to the national security. And this is about time. If you look at all the majority of the Anglo-leasing contracts, they were largely around security issues.
Okay, we are moving away from what I want us to stay on, and I'd like to bring in Mheshimiwa here on the responsibility of stakeholders, specifically the religious leaders, but also there's a documentary that was done by one of our reporters, Asha Mwilu, Terror Crossing, and one of the things that came out clearly in that particular region, there's also an issue of the different dialects and tribes, there's division. What's the responsibility of, because they're also stakeholders? Very briefly.
Yeah, I do understand the new dispensation itself, the devolved systems, the devolution that has come into force has created a lot of fault lines within the different communities of the former Northeastern province. And those fault lines are there. And unfortunately, they haven't been that helpful in dealing with the issues of radicalization and the forays that Al-Shabaab makes into our own country in here. It's a matter that needs to be studied because there's need for us to look at it very closely. I think now that we are in the situation we are, those debates are very lively within Northeastern province, that no community feels left out. To the extent they say, well, let us trash the place and join Al-Shabaab and create a mess in this place so that eventually the county government itself is dissolved You see what I mean? Because there's a provision in the Constitution.
What about
that if there's so much problems, those are areas that, unfortunately, the insinuation has been there for quite a while now.
Specifically, the responsibility of religious leaders, to be united at a time.
No, you see, that is governance. That's more of governance and more of resources. There are a lot of resources in the county, at the county levels, and occasionally the manner in which those resources are distributed within the people can also be very, very clannish or sub-clannish in some cases, and it creates certain fault lines. And some of them probably feel that they are left out completely.
Take advantage of that.
And take advantage of that, and maybe become unwilling or unholy collaborators with Al-Shabaab, with the intention that in the event that this thing proliferates and insecurity becomes too much, intra-clan becomes too much, then there's a chance that the government might be dissolved and be taken to the central government.
Okay.
So those challenges of the devolved systems are there. We cannot wish them away. But I think because of this new narrative, this new inward looking within the region itself and within the leadership.
I still need to hear from you the responsibility of the religious leaders.
That's what I'm talking about.
In terms, because there are major stakeholders, and
Yes.
the narrative that is being pushed is that it's a religious war, whereas we know very well that it is not, because Al-Shabaab is also causing and killing Muslims as well.
Absolutely.
So what is their responsibility? What do you feel they need to do to step up this war?
That's why I was telling you, we have to have a response, counter this within the doctrines of Islam itself, and get the top scholars. That's when I talked about the need for us to have a roadshow, the need for us to address all these issues that are there, the need for us to talk to the youth, the Muslim youth and even the non-Muslim youth, because like he has said, that assimilation itself, by the way, there's something he left out. No, they go a step further and marry the young men from other parts of the country here to Somali girls.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you suddenly young graduate who is a Muslim convert, who is from Central Province, from Western Province, has two Somali brides, and he has all the tons of money, and he has a position of responsibility in the hierarchy of the Al-Shabaab itself. So that integration system itself is what is there, and that is what basically needs to be countered now within the doctrines of Islam itself. And that's why we need the sheikhs I was talking about, Sheikh Omar, Sheikh
What
Muhammad
about
Usman.
the relationship between the Muslim and the Christian?
That's what I'm coming to. That's what I'm coming to. By the way, there are certain Christian leaders also who are extremely radical in their own rights, and who try and take advantage of these things and come into the whole thing here, and keep on talking about we've turned both cheeks, and you know what I mean, and we have no more cheek left. But the point is, we are victims of Al-Shabaab. The Muslim majority in this country here, 99.9% are victims of Al-Shabaab.
Okay.
So we need to unite ourselves, both Muslims and non-Muslims, to eliminate that scourge, and we want to take the frontal role. I mean, we want to be there in the forefront. And in Garissa, when all this massacring was going on, the population came out there, and some of them said, look, we know how to handle guns. These guys are finishing the boys. We want to go in and risk our lives, and the security to stop them. So you can imagine how much it pained the local Muslims in Garissa, the mainstream of the population, so much so that ordinary citizens were prepared to put their lives on the line.
And go and fight
die,
the war.
and die
Okay.
fighting, saving the students who are inside there.
Okay.
So that unity of the country, I think it's there. All we need to do is that we don't become careless in our own pronouncements, whether you're a Christian or a Muslim, and we continue nurturing that, and that bond should be very strong.
All right, there's a need for unity, especially on the religious side of it. Okay, I want to come to you, Simiu, and look at some of the solutions that the government is providing. For example, we know that the wall has been started, the wall on the border. Do you feel that this is a possible solution? Is it the way forward? Is it something that can be done? Because, on this terror crossing, the people on the ground were saying that really is it's a non-starter. Yet these are policies and things that are being done from the capital city. Do you think, from a security perspective, that is a solution?
Okay, before I get to that, I think let me speak briefly on the issue
Very
of
briefly.
religious.
Yes, time is really against us.
I think let's not allow this debate to continue on those lines, because those things we are reading in the papers are a serious danger to this country. Once we start doing that, Al-Shabaab will have won. let's take this thing as a problem for this country. Let's deal with it as Kenyans. The moment we start talking about Christians and Muslims, we are taking this country to the dogs. Let's not go there, and this is my advice.
Okay.
So, number two, I spoke about strategies of countering terrorism. Let's not even talk about Al-Shabaab. Now, for a while, terrorism has been in this country with us, and a good country learns. I want to go back to what I said. A good country learns, and those lessons inform your next action. Somalia and Kenya will always be neighbors. We shall always have easy cross-border businesses, both big and small. We shall marry across, they'll marry across. And we know of walls that have been built in other countries and have not stopped what they were intended to stop. We talk about drugs in Mexico. We talk about Palestine and Israel. While I don't want to dispute the thinking behind the wall, maybe that is one of the things that the government thought should be done to minimize. But in my own understanding as a security person, and some people like calling us, who are these experts? We are not experts. We've gone to school and we've done comparative studies, we've done comparative analysis. As much as we want to look at the wall as one of the things the government is thinking about, I think what this country requires, one is a strategy to counter terrorism, not Al-Shabaab, terrorism. And that strategy must be inclusive. What we see in this country is something happens, the same bureaucrats who were there yesterday when Garissa was attacked are the ones who are being asked to sit somewhere and start planning how to counter. I mean, they were in those offices before. There's a serious problem in this country of government bureaucrats not bringing in people from outside to share knowledge and experience.
And how it has worked before.
And how it has worked before,
not worked.
and how you can assist them to think outside the box. We've not seen it happen in this country. They continue sitting alone, advising the president on issues that never work, and that is the problem we have. So the way forward, this country must start thinking as one country. Bureaucrats in this country must start working with the people. We have academia, we have practitioners, we have religious leaders, we have opinion leaders like Mheshimiwa from where they come from. Sit with all these Kenyans who can add one iota of value on the strategy we want to use as a country and deal with terrorism in this country.
All right. Thank you very much. And I'll come to you, Mr. Halake, and this is in regards to a directive that was given not too long ago by the Deputy President, and he gave UNHCR 3 months to close the refugee camp in Dadaab. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you so much.
As a solution?
I'm not 100% sure that that would be a solution. First and foremost is that Kenya has international obligations as far as the refugees are concerned. But particularly for the Somali refugees, the Kenyan government, Kenya as a country has borne the disproportionate weight of these refugees in this country. But then as far as the Kenyan commitment goes, that, you know, where are we returning these refugees? We are returning them back to Somalia. And we have an obligation as a country, not returning people who've sought refuge in our country, in a country that we very well know that it's not safe. Because Somalia right now, if they go back into Somalia, the path that they go, the dignified manner in which they move, and also very importantly, there is a tripartite agreement between Kenya, Somalia, and UNHCR on voluntary repatriation. But if these people are being forced to move there, I don't think it qualifies as voluntary repatriation, because if they go there, they need their livelihoods together, and, you know, they need safe and security. You know, there will be danger of Al-Shabaab coming and preying on them. And from purely security point of view, if we cannot keep them safe from, you know, of the refugee camp being used as, you know, recruitment center for Al-Shabaab and execution of some of these attacks, if they move across the border, in Kenya we have a fair amount of control over them, right? If they move there, then it will be even more dangerous. But also, if because we do not know up to date that it hasn't been verified to us that it's actually, the camps have been used for that particular purpose of recruitment and launching some of these attacks. But if that is the case, then it is it's a function of counterproductive nature of the government's position of keeping most of these guys in the refugee camps, of not doing proper background checks, of not screening some of these refugees. There are instances of where Kenyans who are not refugees have moved into the refugee camps and stayed in refugee camps and pretended like they are refugees. So that is a problem. So we are looking for a solution in a different part, when in fact, by stigmatizing the refugees, by collectively making them, a scapegoat for our own security, we are actually making things worse.
Okay.
Finally, during Operation Usalama Watch, most of them were pushed, some of them were arrested, and none of them was charged with Prevention of Terrorism Act. So, I mean, we have to be very careful not to stigmatize people who have sought refuge here. There is no doubt Kenya probably, Kenya faces a serious security situation. But it's not purely because of the refugees.
And you don't feel that is a solution, at least a step in the solution?
I'm not 100% sure. Like,
okay.
I'm not 100%.
All right, Mweshimiwa.
Yes, it will be very counterproductive. To begin with, logistically, 500, 600,000 people to be moved within 3 months. You're talking about 1,000, 1,500 buses and trucks and everything every day. And then where do you move them to? You just go and dump them across the border? It's like 600,000 Kenyans, if you were refugees in Uganda, being dumped in Busia. I mean, just imagine that one. It's a small place called Doble. You have to take them from all the different regions they came from, and how safe is the place they're going to go to. The other thing is that, let us be very honest about this. Not a single time was a bona fide refugee arrested and found to have been involved in a terror attack here, or anything, even radicalization. As a matter of fact, the Al-Shabaab came into the refugee camps and killed many refugees because they would not cooperate with them. And in one instant, refugee leaders arrested an Al-Shabaab person, took him to the police station, told them this man is an Al-Shabaab guy. The police were paid money. The man was released, and he came back and executed, I think, 4 or 5 of them. Some of them had to be rushed out of this place to be taken to Canada and other parts of the world for their own safety because of that particular incident, because it was targeting the entire leadership of the refugees that time. So, and taking 600,000 people, and probably 70% of that are young school-going children. And the only hope they have is to get education, get resettlement somewhere else, or go back to Somalia and do something good for themselves. It becomes a very powerful recruiting, harvesting area for Al-Shabaab. But finally, I want to tell you one thing. Between 25 and 30% of the refugees in Dadaab, I was the MP for Dadaab myself. I mean, that's my constituency. I was the MP for Lagdera. Between 25 and 30% of the refugees are actually Kenyans who have gone in there during the drought seasons. Every drought, they go in there to look for free food because you can't starve. Yes. One of the problems they have right now is for their children to access ID cards, which is another problem. It's another ticking time bomb. Because if a young child cannot go to university, cannot progress in his life, he becomes a stateless person within his own country, because his father, who was poor at that time and whose livestock had died, had taken the family, young boys and girls of 2 years, 3 years old, and they took their fingerprints. You can never know.
So in short, just to summarize what you're saying is that you're saying it's counterproductive and it is not a step towards a solution of having this terror.
Did you see the warning that was given by the UN? The UN said, no, you can't do it. And if you go ahead and do that right now, we suddenly become a pariah state in the international community that does not respect its own laws. We've just come out of cases in ICC for your information. And one of those cases of ICC was the dislocation and the removal of populations.
Okay.
And now we do that to vulnerable refugees.
All right, I get your point. Simi, we come to you, and now as we are winding up, looking at all these directives that have been given and generally the steps that we're taking on the war of terror, what is the one thing that you'd say would move us closer? Where do we need to start? It looks like there are many directives that have been given that have not been thought through. Where do we start? What's the first step?
I think the first step is let the Minister of Interior first be in charge of coordinating any strategies that we want to work on against terrorism. And why am I using the word terrorism and not Al-Shabaab? Because terrorism, it talks about ideology. We are talking about money laundering that's interfering with the economy of this country. It brings about extremism. It brings about radicalization. It brings about jihadism. That is terrorism. So as a country, I think we need a central location where everything that is being done to counter what we want to do should be centralized to the ministry that is supposed to do it. So that we don't have other people talking about communication, they're talking about countering terrorism. Devolution is talking about countering devolution. Put it somewhere together.
Have a central...
And then the country must sit down, bring in people to start looking. You know, this country has never done that. We can call it, Mheshimiwa, a working committee or group to start now seriously looking at what we need to do as a country. What we are doing now are short-term measures to deal with issues that are bedeviling this country.
Right.
But I don't think, and I stand corrected, that this country has ever sat down and brought people together with diverse views, intellect, and thinking to have a way forward.
So we need that central working committee, as it were,
to create
brainstorm.
To create a national strategy that is understood by all Kenyans, all security forces, organs, politicians, and any other person who has an opinion in this country to fight terrorism.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Halake, your closing comments?
I think my closing comment will be around the question of the refugees. We've got to be very careful not to, these guys sought refuge in Kenya, and they didn't choose to be in Kenya. So if they want to go back to their country, let there be a condition where they can go back to a country that is safe, because it is our obligation to keep them safe. Like Mheshimiwa said, if we go ahead and push these guys out, we are seeing a very serious, humanitarian problem. We have unaccompanied minors, we have children, there will be diseases, and if we do not have a clear way, and this clear way can only be done voluntarily by the refugees. It's not just a question of us pushing. There should be a significant pull factor that is comfortable for them to go. The path that they want to go on, from here. Not all of them are from the same region, even within Somalia. Not all of them, something like 20,000 of those refugees are actually non-Somalis. We have to think around all those issues. And Kenya, very importantly, Kenya should respect its international obligations around the question of refugees. Let's not be let's not victimize, people who are already in an incredibly vulnerable situation for what is seriously...
Like you've said, they're not here by choice.
They are not.
All right, Mheshimiwa Farah Maalim, closing comments.
My approach would be in 3 ways. One is that we put together the scholarly component to de-radicalize Kenyan youth and all Kenyan youths. And then the other bit is that we've got to put together a small elite force, which can be called anti-terrorist, anti-terrorism. We already have anti-terrorism police unit, but then you can, whatever name is going to be given, and let it be from all the disciplines of the forces under a proper command, a proven command, and let them deal with it in making sure that it's eliminated in our midst, because there's so many of them, I'm sure, are sleeping cells now here.
Right.
Thirdly, let us engage the African Union. I don't think the role of the African Union in Somalia is a genuine one. For example, these terrorists never engaged the Ethiopians. The Ethiopians move out, the terrorists, Al-Shabaab comes in, Al-Shabaab moves out, the Ethiopians come in, they never engage them. And the same thing also, the Ugandan forces are having a good time there. The Burundian forces are having a very good time there. None of them wants Al-Shabaab threat to be eliminated itself. If Puntland and Somaliland were able to eliminate the threats of Al-Shabaab without international support, the presidency of Somalia right now in Mogadishu and the South Central and the South Jubaland can be in a position to eliminate it. Let us now start talking about the removal of all those forces, the withdrawal of all those forces, but in a programmed and a structured manner, and at the same time the training of the Somali security forces and the wiping out completely of Al-Shabaab from the source. You have to cut a tree from the roots. So we drain it at the pond, which is inside Somalia. The manner in which the AMISOM forces are right now working, I think they're playing politics. I mean, this is all other issues.
Thank you. We have to close it right there. I know, Simi, you wanted to say something there, but time is there. But I'll give you like just 2 seconds to, you know, say what
I think two things which I had forgotten. One, at our operational level, we only have one elite squad in the police and one elite team in the military. As a quick reactive issue, let's equip them. We realize they lack certain things that make them rapid respond in nature. As a country, let's create funds, give it to them, equip them, make them the only thing that we have as we look at other long-term measures. And then lastly, just like Mheshimiwa said here, I think we also need to look at our policy in Somalia. I'm not advocating the removal or pulling out of our Somali troops. I don't advocate for that.
No.
But I think we need to look at ourselves. Our objective as we went into Somalia, has it remained the same? Or we have changed and we've started engaging ourselves in other things like local politics,
business.
You know? So those are the things that as a country we need to ask ourselves.
All right.
That's what I wanted to mention.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and thank you for coming to the studio and helping us, you know, just check the state of the nation. Simiu Werunga, Director of African Center for Security, former Deputy Speaker and MP for Lagdera. Former MP, sorry, Farah Maalim and Abdullahi Halake, East Africa researcher at Amnesty International. Thank you so very much. We really appreciate. And that's where we end our State of the Nation today. But do stand by. We've got our Fitness Thursday coming up, and it's all about fitness. So don't you go away. Get your kit ready. We're going to be working it out right here, or rather from the gym.